Would you like some coffee? Hey, don't drink the coffee. You're too little. All right, welcome everybody to our daily gun show. We come to you live every week. Come on, every weeknight at midnight Eastern, and we talk about guns for a while, for an hour. Our goal would be to go all night long chatting about Second Amendment for an hour, guns, the community and industry for a couple hours, and then spend that last hour of the show getting ready for the next day, giving them a sit rep, getting everybody ready. All right, so welcome. See what happens tonight. Kind of re-evaluating season 8. I've got some big plans. I got some big ideas, but I've also got some real projects I'm working on that keep just taking a lot of time. Big projects mean multiple people. Multiple people mean moving pieces. Moving pieces take collaboration. And once everything's meshed, works good. But getting it all set up can be frustrating and time-consuming and laborious. So I got a puppy here to help me de-stress. Got some patches over here, another project we've been working on. We'll talk about that tonight. We're here to talk about guns and gun-related stuff, Second Amendment and whatnot. Just got out of barbecue. Guns and Barbecue hosts a chat every Tuesday and Thursday. Talking to him about some software. That's why we ran a little bit late. Also, somebody needs to go outside all the time. Somebody likes to go outside right before the show so that then they leave me alone during the show and be a good co-host. All right, well, so that's what we're doing. So welcome. All right, puppy. Somebody, I don't know what he wants right now, actually. It's not licky, so I know what it isn't. So it's probably food. It's probably food that he wants right now. But we can take odds. Right now it's telling me that we're about 3 minutes into the show. I don't think he'll last 10, so we'll see how long he goes before he falls asleep. But until then, he'll be pestering me. He's a pesterer. He's a pesterer. All right, we'll stop that camera and we'll say, hey, what's happening? So, Gunmetal Guy is here this afternoon, this evening. Welcome. Comrade is showing up. We've got Bentos, Gizzard Gary, Ozzy, and Runway. Welcome, everybody. If they're out there and you don't let us know, then we won't know it. So feel free to use the comments there. We value the interactive nature of the internet. That's why we do these shows live instead of scripted presentation pieces. So it is the anniversary of the 1911 being patented. It was patented on February 14th, 1911. Interesting gun. Obviously in service for a long, long time. Oh, can I get this? Oh, I didn't get it. He was yawning. It's in service for a long, long time. And it had an interesting trial, I guess. I'm not 100% of the details, but when the military decided they wanted to go to a semi-automatic, there's a couple of different contenders, and the Colt 1911 was one of them, and it had very few malfunctions, if any, and won the trials for the military. Then I guess it was patented today, so it'll be a different day that it went through those trials, but had to be patented at some point. It brings us the 1911, the single action semi-automatic. Single action meaning one pull of the trigger, or the trigger does one thing as you pull it, a single action trigger, and that means it drops the hammer. So that means that a single action semi-automatic has the hammer back and the safety engaged to carry it around and just live its life. And then when it's time to go into use, you drop the safety and pull the trigger. With a double action semi-automatic, what most people are familiar with, your trigger does two things. It pulls back the hammer and drops the hammer, or pulls back the striker and drops the striker. So you've got two actions being done by the trigger, which typically seems more safe to people. So you end up with, instead of having a hammer back all the time with a safety stopping it from going forward, you have a hammer forward and it goes back and drops with the pull of the trigger. And the 1911 was the beginning of all of that. So there were other semi-automatics at the time, but Browning was really interesting. He's considered, an important innovator in firearms because he brought us from bolt action guns to falling block and other types of actions and stuff to lever actions. And from that lever action, which was essentially a feeding action, an action that could both empty the chamber and prepare and move into place and then chamber the next cartridge. That innovation, that mechanism that allowed a mechanism to load the gun, let him get to the next point. The story is that he was shooting with his brother and he was shooting a rifle when he was laying down in the grass. And this is from the movie at the museum, when he was shooting, he saw the grass at the end of the muzzle blow over. It was being affected by the muzzle blast, by the energy coming out the muzzle. So he decided, what if I was able to harness that energy going out the muzzle and operate my lever? So the first one was that potato digger, and that was literally the gas system pushing a lever that moved the lever on a lever action gun. So as you shot it, it was dropping the lever. It was moving the lever and cycling the action. So the first full autos, the potato digger, was Browning simply putting a lever mechanism and a gas piston capture thingy on his lever action rifle. And then he figured out how to shrink all that, turned it into semi-auto, and he essentially made full auto before he even made semi-auto. And then he's like, oh, that's kind of neat, but you don't need to necessarily empty the magazine every time you pull a trigger. So let's slow that down. And then he made semi-auto. So he took us from bolt action guns to a couple of different actions to lever actions to full auto, back to semi-auto, and then he played around a little bit with different ways to create that semi-auto. Interesting dude. He would take apart his prototypes and turn them into the next prototype, so there's not very many works in process of his. He's very frugal and he just used the stuff over, according to the museum. So not a lot of artifacts from him. His museum is in Ogden, Utah, which is just north of Salt Lake City, just like an hour or something north of Salt Lake City. It's in a train museum, so you can see some trains and some automobiles and stuff at that same museum. But once you leave his museum, you can go to his 3 factories. His house is still there, and you can see the town that most of the development of firearms was created in, or was designed in. Really neat town to be in. Thomas is saying, love the videos on the ammo collection. Well, man, if I had more time, that's all I would do is ammo related stuff. I really like that stuff. I have a couple of reasons to get into the ammo collection. I just haven't had the time. Been working on a couple of large projects. Like I say, we're getting to the point where the projects are together. We're just meshing the teeth. And once it's all calibrated, preventive maintenance from that point on, just evaluating the mechanism and then seeing it work and starting to evaluate it, creating metrics and evaluating those metrics. Once all that stuff's over, hopefully during somewhere in there, people who are Patreons down here will jump on board and we'll have more and more Patreons to allow us to spend some more time with that ammo stuff. But we've done decks of cards on things, and I've always talked about doing a deck of cards on the ammunition. I'd really like to do that. And in order to get that up and rolling, I need to first get the bayonets off my plate. I got too many things on the desktop right now, and one of them is the bayonet project, the AK bayonets. So the ammo will come after the bayonets, but it is certainly my passion when I'm selling the bayonets in order to do the ammo one. I actually would talk to an ammo collector at the antique show at the end of SHOT Show this year, and I'm essentially invited to go to the big ammunition show that happens each year, the second biggest one, I think, or maybe it's the biggest, I forget. And it's like the weekend before or after Wanamaker. So I really, 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 really want to go, but I don't have any money, so we're not probably going to be able to go, but that would be great. One day, 1 year. But yeah, definitely that would be my direction, where if I had nothing else to do and the time to do it, we'd be talking about ammunition. I don't know why. I just really like it. I've been playing around with guns a long time, since I was a little kid, since I was this puppy's age. And even when I was this puppy's age, I had a cigar box of ammunition, of cartridges and stuff that I would find and stuff that I thought was neat. I don't have it anymore. I wish I did, but that was the beginning. So I've always had ammo around. I've always had to reload, so I understood ammo physically, or the guts of it, and went to a lot of museums. So big fan of it. My thoughts on the 3855 Winchester are very few. I've probably fiddled with it. If I might own one cartridge, and I'm sure I fiddled with guns at the shop because Bob really liked those kind of guns. But nothing. I don't know anything about it specifically. It's a 38, meaning 38 caliber, 38 diameter, and then 55, what means 55 grains of black powder, I think. So that gives you an idea how big it is. Like 4570 is 70 grains of black powder. Quigley shot a 75 110. So 55 is not huge. It's not little. There's a 4440, so it's not a 40. So 3855 kind of tells you right away that it's a 38 diameter with a 55, intermediate cartridge, intermediate amount of power there. So that's all I can tell you. If I'm right, then it's a probably something like a 30-06. No, something like a 308 caliber. Like it's a battle rifle caliber. 3855. I don't know. Maybe not battle. Maybe it is more like a 308. It's like a 308, right? Compared to 30-06 would be your 4570s or something bigger, and your 5.56s would be your 25s, maybe. There's a bunch of 25s out there. Now, as far as the calibers, from what I understand, hanging out at museums and listening to old folks, the calibers were sort of like they are today. You had your fans of different calibers, and then they would buy that gun, and then they would be buying that caliber, like it or not. You don't just decide I'm going to shoot a different caliber. So you became a fan of a caliber, and then you bought guns or guns in it, and then you were a fan of that caliber. Like you were buying that caliber, and probably a factor was if your store in town had it or not. So I'm not sure if 3855 has some regional appeal, or maybe it was great for deer. So if they were hunting deer in that area, that's what you got on the menu. It's hard to say. Look at, he's falling over. He's falling over. He's being inappropriate. Don't look what he's doing. He's doing something gross. Don't look. Put it. Don't do that when we're on the internet. Come on. All right, now he's falling over. Go to sleep. So he lasted 14 minutes. I was petting him, though, and I was probably artificially keeping him up. But now he's falling over, and he'll eventually fall asleep. Winchester 94 and 3855. Yeah, right on. See, it's right in the middle, right? Like it's not narrow and it's not wide gauge or chamber or whatever caliber, and it's about medium in the power factor, I guess. So I could see that. As far as buying 3850, do you love buying 3850? You'd probably have to reload it, right? It doesn't seem like a caliber you see on the shelves too often. That being said, I don't buy it ever, so maybe it is out there and I just don't see it. Now, I have no idea if that's a necked cartridge or not either. All right, so let's see, what else do we got going on? DJ's got a link to our robot. Thanks for that. So we are working on trying to get a robot from Allen Anchor. It looks like we might be able to meet up with Allen Anchor sooner than later, which would be cool. So if by any chance anybody's out there, sugar mamas, there's a couple who get together on this and grab that robot so that it's fully funded by the end of the weekend, or excuse me, by the end of the week, so that this weekend I could just have Allen Anchor bring that robot with him. That'd be great. Let's see, I'm trying to open it up here if I can click the right buttons. Robert's out there. Good evening. Seeing some new names. let us know what part of the country you're in. You don't have to be too specific if you don't want to, but curious what part of the country's people are in. All right, we've got a couple more backers on board. We have 13 days left. DJ's got the link in there, so I'll highlight that. I can't pin it from here, so I'll just highlight it for now. But thanks for dropping a link to that project. Over on Indiegogo, we've got a month-long project. We're about halfway through it. It's got about 13 more days left, so we've got to start putting on the gas here. We're trying to raise $7,000. We're not quite to 1,000 of it, so not quite a seventh of the way. We're at 12% of the way. We've already unlocked a run of patches, so everybody's going to get a PVC patch of the dogs. Then you'll also get some stuff from the machine. So the thing is, I don't have the machine yet, and I don't know what I can do with it, so I don't want to oversell anything. But typically, once I get something, I know what to do with it. I can start doing stuff out of it, and I make it worth your while. But without knowing ahead of time what I'm going to be able to do, I'm going to leave it conservative, let's say. So essentially, you're throwing $50 as a venture capitalist with 150 other people into this project. And assuming everything goes according to plan, this is enough money to go to California to buy the robot from them, from Allen Acre, and to spend some time there in California while they are teaching me how to work their robot. And then I will steal the robot from them when they're not looking, and I will drive back to Arizona with it. And then I will put it to work here in Arizona to do our bidding. It can do hats, and it can do patches and stuff like that, but it can do other stuff. So I'm looking forward to testing it out and not breaking it, hopefully. It's a professional machine, though, so it's got to be able to deal more. I mean, I wailed on my old machine, but it was a machine for grandmas to make baby clothes. This is a real machine for professionals to use for a long time. So it should be able to, it's a tool. It should be able to work. So I'm looking forward to what we can do with this. And if you're interested in being a part of it, essentially $50. Need 150 people. We've got 20 of them so far. We've got almost 2 weeks to finish it, which is completely doable. If you're not interested or able to participate with the financial side of it, we're going to ask you to please share the project. You never know who might be watching your stuff and who might think it'd be cool to see what could happen if I had this robot to work with. So please share it. Please let people know about it. We got a couple of weeks to get the word out. And then we've got a 15 color embroidery machine on our side. And I'm not looking to become a patch company. I mean, we'll definitely have some custom stuff on the Gear website store, but what I'm really looking forward to is being able to make even cooler one-offs, stuff, individual stuff. We'll be doing a series of videos here to show off some of the things we've done with the old robots, to give you a sample, just a taste of what I can do when I have a robot that can do one color at a time. I really can't even imagine how cool it would be to have 15 colors at a time. It's something I've been trying to do for a while, but these things aren't cheap. They're thousands and thousands of dollars. Even an old junky used one. And this one, they're giving me a pretty decent price on it. It's fairly new, and it works. So I'm not buying a lemon. I'm not buying an unknown. I'm buying something from friends who have been using it, and they're just simply crazy, and they don't want it no more. So that's my project at the moment. Try to get this robot. Try to get over to California to learn how to use it, and then start selling stuff. All right, going back to the comments here. Let's see. So Ron is saying, reload for it, question mark. I have a 3040 Craig. I have to reload because ammo just isn't to be found. That's definitely a caliber that's harder to find for. And then Thomas is saying, no, I have a lot of 3855. It's Old Dominion ammo. I have 20 and a half boxes. I got them in an estate sale. Seems like a lot, but when you get down to 10, you're going to go, And then when you get down to fewer than that, you're going to go, So here's a little tip for anybody, for any kind of caliber, even the 9mm shooters. It's legal still. Buy ammo, period. That's your tip. Buy ammo all the damn time. If you always buy ammo, you're always buying cheap ammo. You know why? Because 5 years from now, you're going to look back and go, I should have bought all the ammo I could have bought. 10 years from now, you're going to go, dang it, I should have bought that ammo instead of that Disney subscription, or I should have bought ammo instead of that like sugary sweet or something. Oh, let's see. My wonderful wife bought me a 1917 P08 Luger. Oh, nice. Is that for like Valentine's Day or something? Those aren't my favorites, but I totally understand why people dig them. I mean, they're kind of like fancy cars. Like I don't get them. I don't want a Lamborghini. I don't want a Porsche. But I totally understand the people that dig them and what's up. What's so cool about them. So I get them. I've definitely fiddled with them before, but yeah, that's got to be pretty neat. And when you get something like that from, you know, your wife, I can imagine that's even more cool because then she's thinking about what you're interested in, and there's all that going on. That's got to be really cool. Guns are normal, and normal people enjoy guns. That's awesome. Got Thomas saying, I did buy some dies for it, but I'm new to reloading it. It's hard to find powder and primers. Oh, in Canada. Okay. Well, I don't know where you're at, but you must know Bob. So Bob can help you. Just say that. And yeah, that's got to be freaking annoying. Powder is one of them things that is always kind of tough to find. I guess there might have been times that I wasn't paying attention to where people were like, oh, powder's so cheap and plentiful. But I don't think that's very often. I think it's often there's either like a war going on or something where they're using all the manufacturing processes to create surplus or create demand, fill demand, or they just have schedules and they make this powder. The stupid 9mm people use up all the good powders, and then they have to make the powders for everybody else. And there's only so much time in a day, and there's only so many shifts in a weekend or something, so they can only get so many things made. And at least that's the excuse usually. But what about making powder? I've seen a couple of videos about making gunpowder. I'm sure it's not ideal compared to something you buy at the store because of the fancy chemicals that they put in it or the fine percentages or ratios that they're able to obtain to get like the perfect mix. But it seemed pretty dang easy. And when you consider for a long time, everybody just did everything themselves. Uh, Surprisingly simple to make it. And if you've got a robust enough rifle that can handle, the probably fluctuations and pressures and things that you might get in hand loaded stuff or hand created stuff, that might be neat. But that's also going off on a tangent. There's also the same thing that you did with your ammo. Just buy a bunch of powder next time you see it cheap. It's all about dollar cost averaging, buying stuff when you can, when it's cheap, thinking yourself later. See what I can do. Payday. Yeah, I hear you there. What I used to do is, well, when I used to work at AOL and stuff, I had money, and when I've had other jobs where I had money, and I can't say I did this in the '90s because I was a dumbass and I was just living life. But whenever Y2K happened and since, so for the last 20 something years, um, well, not for the last 20 years, but for a good chunk of those years, when I would go to a gun show, that's when I would buy stuff. I figured, here's my theory. I would always try to get somehow not have to pay for parking. And there's a couple of different ways to do that. So, assuming you got to pay for parking, like if you're just a regular person, you got to pay for parking at a gun show, that might be $5-10. Actually, it's more like 10 plus bucks nowadays. So now you're paying for parking and then you got to go into the show. So it might be 25 bucks, 20 bucks to get into the show. You could easily be at 25, 30 bucks, easily, maybe even 50 bucks just to walk in the door of a gun show. I'm not complaining. Gun shows aren't obligated. There's no part of the Constitution that says, and then promoters will make gun shows free for everyone. Like that's not part of us. We're not communism. So the place that it exists costs money. They have to create parking lots and insurance, and they get to keep the roof from leaking, or at least mostly. They got to keep lights on. They got to keep the grass cut most of the time. There's jobs to do, even at the most the most what's the word, like the least fancy of facilities for gun shows, and then the more fancy the facility is, obviously the more and more costs are involved. So I'm not suggesting that gun shows should be free or nothing. I understand the cost of them. If gun show promoters were getting rich, then we'd see the extravagant lifestyles of gun show promoters television show. It just doesn't happen. Gun show promoters almost exclusively do it for passion and for just to make sure that the gun shows don't die. But you'd pay something to get into the gun show, and that was like, say, a necessity. But you can also get into gun shows for free. So let's talk about that in a different show. So you get into your gun show and you paid something to get there. Even if you got there for free, you still had to take time away from whatever things you might be doing in the world. So you're at this gun show. Let's make it worth your while. Buy ammo. Buy ammo. Nobody's going to give you ammo for free, probably. So buy ammo. Now you buy ammo this week and it costs $20. You buy ammo next week and it's $15, and you think, great. You buy ammo the next week and it's $25. You just bought $20 ammo all the time. That's it. So you buy it the next week, you just keep buying ammo. Over time, same thing with magazines. I don't know. Nobody else is going to give you this advice. You can't own enough magazines. If you think you have enough magazines, then you're not aware right. You've got to get your head straight and keep buying magazines. You can never have too many magazines for guns that are useful. If it's some gun your grandpa gave you and you're never going to use it for nothing, who cares? If it's your Glock that you carry every day, or if it's your little Wonder 9 that you carry around, magazines are perishable and magazines are necessary for the operation, and magazines should be not thought about at all in an emergency situation. Just like you don't think about your brass cases in an emergency situation, buy more magazines. Be able to ignore magazines. And you can only do that when you buy them a lot. You'll buy magazines often, you'll find out where the cheapest magazines are. It's just the nature of it. Unless you're crazy and you're super rich, you're going to find the cheapest magazines when you buy them all the time. So buy ammo, buy magazines when you go to gun shows. And now that's essentially saving you money, because you're going to be getting them at all different prices, which means you're going to be getting them at the lower prices also. Every once in a while, you're going to get ripped off, and you're going to learn some lessons, and you're going to realize who's got the best deals. Every once in a while, you want to do that, get outside your comfort zone. But that's the way to do it. And you do that for a while, and you're going to end up with confidence, and you're going to be good to go. Where do you get magazines? I bought them off of a friend of mine at the gun show. So I would just go in and I'd always buy 2 magazines off of them for years and years and years and years and years. That guy knew that I'd come into the gun show and I'd walk over and buy 2 magazines off of him, and then I'd go do other stuff. Those were Ruger magazines, because I had 2 Ruger P89s back in the day, and those were my go-to guns. And I didn't ever have enough magazines for them. I still find magazines for those things. Then it was Glocks, and the same thing, except Glock magazines you can buy from almost anybody. Just find whoever's cheapest. If you're buying factory magazines, you're buying them from whoever's cheapest. If you're buying specific magazines, question your choices. You're not getting good advice from people. If you need to buy specially fit magazines that are perfect for your gun and only the one brand works, then you've got a fussy gun. Someone should have told you that by now. Your gun's too fussy and it's not a good tool. There's probably not that many guns like that anymore, but there used to be. Magazines are a commodity. You can never have too many. Yeah. And what's the worst case scenario? Oh, I finally woke up and I hate 9mm like a decent person. So now I'm going to go to a decent caliber and get rid of this 9mm Wonder garbage. Well, guess what? You can still sell those magazines. Still, there's somebody out there. You pass the trash. Some sucker's going to buy that 9mm magazine off you. So yeah, you can always buy magazines. You can always get rid of magazines because everybody needs them. Let's see. Robert's saying last month I bought an AR. Oh, Ruger AR. Right on. Let's see. Worst comes to worst, I have a 50 caliber flintlock. Right on. I've got a couple of percussions, and then I finally got a flintlock after not having a flintlock forever. It was maybe a kit. I'm not sure if it was a kit or it's just either a really well-made kit or it's just an inexpensive, off-the-shelf complete gun. But either way, it's fairly inexpensive. It's not super frills or nothing. It definitely looks like a kit to me, but it could just be an inexpensive one. But it's flintlock. And I don't remember if it had a flint or not, but if it did, it was broken, and I ended up having to get another flint to be a little sharper or whatever. And man, is that thing fun to shoot. I cannot tell you how fun it is to shoot a real flintlock compared to a percussion caps. Percussion caps are okay, but they're super dependable, and although they occasionally fail, you can get them wet or something. They're essentially easy. They're no fun. The flint, you have to adjust it right, and then once you put a little piece of leather and everything, it's like really neat, and then you get it all adjusted right, and then you're getting a good strike every time. you feel like a pirate or some shit. You feel like the olden days. And then you think about for a long time, that was the highest tech. That was what made a human different than an animal, is that we could figure out a way to create a lock and then put that in a stock with a barrel, right? And then you had these flintlock rifles, and those were freaking magic. So it's pretty neat shooting flintlocks. I don't know how many people do that, slow down and grab a flintlock and just fiddle with it. You don't have to become a mountain man. You don't have to become a Renaissance thing, and your whole personality doesn't have to go nuts. But owning a flintlock is just super fun. I should go grab it just to fiddle with it, see what I'm talking about. But the same way if you fiddle with a little NAA revolver, they're magic. They're just super 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 fun because they're real and they're tiny. I guess it's almost as fun as big giant guns, but anybody can make something big. So big just ends up being tough to hold on to, or hold to grab. Um, but you take apart like your Luger. Well, let's see. You said you also bought her a 1942 PPK. I'm trying to remember these old ones, but those kind of things, like those are both German, so they're very similar in some ways, but obviously their mechanisms are totally different. So that can be appreciated. But then you just look at an old revolver and you look at like a 1911's birthday today, or you take apart like a lever action. We've been talking about the guns we've been talking about. Those are so different. Their mechanisms are so different. They all essentially do the same thing, but in such different ways. And at this point, each of these examples at least are super iconic. So super neat. And I don't think you need to be a gunsmith or any kind of mechanic to appreciate that element of a gun. And that's probably most people, unless you pick up something really kind of not all that intricate, something that's kind of like a High Point or a something made out of Zamek, or maybe like an old Nagant revolver or something crude that was made for armies or something. Some stuff isn't all that exciting. Some of it does seem a little bit like a farm implement. Like think of like an SKS compared to a bolt action gun or something. Some of them can be a little bit crude and not all that interesting, but most guns, most people, their first gun they hold on to, they're just intrigued by the preciseness and the design and the kind of the dual use of so many of the parts, or the way that a pin will capture a spring and how that must have been thought about and evaluated. It's just there's such evolution and such tech in these things. Then you think about like these black powders that we're talking about, flintlocks or percussion caps. They're balanced and weighted because you've got this heavy steel barrel with essentially a tiny little lock mechanism in front of your hand. All this stuff is out in front of your hand. So how do you balance that so that a normal human can hold on to it without having to have arms like a gorilla or something? And that's through design. They created wooded stocks that look the way they do because when your human hand, in the anatomy and the bones of your human hand, grab that stock in the, I don't know what to call it, but in the orientation that you do, your arm muscles come into play, and the long muscles of your arm wrap around your shoulder and balance that weight of that gun in front of your hand without any effort. It's awesome. And that isn't accidental. That's because people had nothing else to do but whittle away different shape stocks and ask people their feedback for hundreds of years. And now, we're worrying about grip angles and what's comfortable when you jam it in your pants. Just a whole different level of characteristics that nobody gave a shit about back in the day when you weren't going to jam a gun in your pants. It would have been pointless to jam a flintlock in your pants. Would have not been able to come into play. It would have not been useful to the gun. It would have rusted and stuff. Nowadays, that's not an issue, and we are jamming guns into our pants. So it's interesting. So flintlock is not a firearm in Canada, but a percussion cap musket is a firearm. Does that make much sense? Yeah, because a flintlock isn't as reliable, and they had to draw a line, and you have people who aren't familiar with the technology, who aren't comfortable with the technology. They probably associate understanding firearms with some sort of acceptance of violence, which is, manipulation at a national level or at a societal level. People will call that the Overton window. People will call it manipulation or exploitation. But that's something that we have to battle with. So I get you that that's a weird line to have drawn in the sand. But when you realize it wasn't rocket scientists who knew everything about guns who made those lines, it was a bunch of politicians who either did know and are intentionally creating rifts and divisions, or don't know and accidentally create rifts and divisions. But what they do know is they're eroding the acceptance and the normalization of guns. If they can say these guns are bad, or these guns are less dangerous, or these guns are okay, but those guns are for bad people, they win. So it's a part of a remnant of that, and it's a silly discrimination between two, but no, it doesn't make sense. But the concept of it is understandable, and it's the result of a circumstance, and just like anything, you can put that back together. You can extrapolate it or think about it going the other way. And by normalizing guns, you make guns less scary or intimidating. When you understand guns, when you're not as scared of guns anymore, you can understand guns. And now you know that, okay, guns are essentially a mechanism and that they're designed to do this, the same as a drill or a stove or a knife. It's got a sharp edge, and then it's got a place to hold it, and it's designed to cut things. And the human being with intent decides what they're going to pick it up and cut with it. And once you understand that, then you can say, okay, a rational person over here is not going to do anything weird with it just because it exists. And once you can understand that, you're never going to pass a law that says, what if the gun gets up and runs around the room cutting people? Well, once guns are normalized and people understand them enough to know that that's not possible, they're going to look at that politician who'd bring that up and go, why would you even suggest that? What is your ulterior motive here? Because you're suggesting things that aren't true. And once the politicians understand that that's the level of scrutiny their crazy ideas will come up with, they'll move on to complain about railings on stairways, fences around swimming pools, access to lakes, number of calories in a soda. They'll have a list of other things that they've historically decided to meddle in, and they'll pursue things that aren't constitutionally protected, that don't have a restriction for the government to be able to infringe on them. And they've been doing it over guns for a long time because they've been able to, but they're not going to have that free reign forever. Pen Patriots out there, good afternoon, good evening. Let's see. So if I'm missing any comments, let me know. I don't think I'm missing anything. Okay, Gizzard, I missed this one before. Say what you will about the 1911, but that basic design is still being copied to this day, even with all the new designs available now. When you talk about I forget what it's called, but the barrel being disconnected from the frame, in other words, free-floating barrel from the frame, that was an element to the 1911, which was different than some of the other semi-automatics. When you think of like a Makarov, where the frame and the barrel are together, and then you get the accuracy of the barrel being attached to your receiver or to your frame, the thing that you're holding on to, and you have your reciprocating slide, the action, moving around that core. It can typically be more accurate. But then you have your sights jumping around on this slide that has nothing to do with the rest of the gun. So then some guns decided to wrap the sights up with the frame and put the slide inside of them. And that's where you get a couple of different designs, I think. And then you get some differences in the way that the rails hold the slide on top. So, but the idea of how the barrel is disconnected from the frame and moves about inside the slide in order to lock up and also disengage to allow the gun to operate. I don't know what the words are, like at a different rate or dwell. I don't know what the word is when, how quickly after firing, the gun is going to open and start to cycle. That kind of stuff is copied almost in every design, right? In almost every design. Not quite every design, because nowadays you got a whole bunch of these new guns being made with the barrels attached to the frames, but I just don't know if it's, I think dwell has to do with gas, so I don't know if that has to do with it, but I think that's the right thing. All right, got to get some sleep before work. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks for answering my questions. Love the content. Right on. Thanks. So I appreciate your patience with the lack of direction of the show right now. This happens every once in a while when you're almost at 1,500 episodes. And I just have a lot of stuff going on in real life right now. I'm letting the show kind of take the brunt of that, and the result is it's a sloppy show right now. I do have some goals, though. I've always had goals for the show. I don't do this because I got nothing else to do. I do it so that I keep the routine, I keep the discipline of the show, and we kind of point that effort at different things. So let's go backwards. Last year, season 7, I attempted to do a daily routine. So Mondays, we would talk about Second Amendment content creators. We would inspire, educate, inform, offer advice, coaching, and we do interviews. So the whole goal of Mondays was for the content creator, the person who wants to create content focused on what the Second Amendment protects, who wants to do content on gun-related stuff. In 2022, when the environment is difficult, if not against the topics, depending on what platform you're on, but also it's not. There is the perception that the platforms are out to get you, but most of that perception is propagated and regurgitated by people who aren't paying attention, people who don't know the processes, don't care to learn, or people that do know and know that they'll never be able to work within the system, that have decided that they are not going to try to work within any kind of system or framework, and therefore cry wolf, therefore suggest that the system's out to get them because they have no interest in participating. Well, it's like going into a restaurant and figuring out that they want you to wear a shirt and then telling the world that they're out to get you because they made you put a shirt on. No, you walked into their business and you decided to do things your way, and they've got a policy in place for their customers or their business. And that's really what we're dealing with here. So we can get all upset and we can insist on not wearing our shirt, or we could wear a little net shirt, or we could wear a half shirt, or we could wear a tank top, or we could just wear a freaking shirt for 15 minutes, or we could create our own ice cream shop or whatever it is. But the people that cry about not being able to wear a shirt are not, they're wasting everybody's time. So so last year our goal on Mondays was to get rid of that paradigm, get rid of that glitch, get rid of that, or at least move on past that concept that they're out to get us. Instead, not working with them, but just working around them, working within the systems that are available to us, adapting and overcoming. The gun industry has been around a lot longer than social platforms. Gun owners have been around a lot longer than social platforms. These are a passing fad. The social platforms are an interesting side note to the development of human communication. Gun ownership has lasted through all of it, through pamphlets, through printing, through books, through magazine, through radio, through television, through cable, through internet, through dial-up, through cell phones, through high speed, through streaming, through everything. And we're going to keep being here through all of it. Guns are normal. Normal people own guns. People talk to each other. People share photographs and videos and conversations. It'll just always be a part of it. So people that get hung up and get mad because their version doesn't work today on this platform are people that aren't strong enough to keep moving on other platforms and understand that this is a big race, a big game, a long-term thing that we're all part of, and that you don't have to be caught up when you get a flat tire and say that that the cars are out to get you. All right, so Robert's saying, when I was younger, I tried for the Braves and didn't qualify. I finished the Q course, so well done. not sure how you finish the Q course and then don't qualify, but I can understand that things get weird in there. But right on. So then Monday was inspiration for Second Amendment activists, the workshops and interviews. When I interview, I try to give people an hour to talk about why they do what they do and how they do what they do. They usually talk about what they do and that kind of thing. I like to let people talk about why they do it. One, to give them the opportunity. Often people have said they value that because they don't get asked or they don't get an opportunity to elaborate on why they do it. And it's important to most people who are putting their own time and effort into something that isn't just paying off. Anybody who's making $1 million, it's easy to know why they're doing it. But people that aren't, people that are grinding themselves at great expense into their passion, that's interesting to find out why they're doing it. It often has to do with way more than just their own experience. It has to do with the better world they're trying to create, right? Or be part of. Then we ask them how they do that, because people have their own way of doing it. Every time I ask the how question, I'm pleasantly inspired and surprised, because the final result is always discovered or experienced from the experience of the person who's experiencing it, right? So if I see you with a red barn, or if I see your red barn, I think, that's a nice barn you painted, because I've painted barns before. But what if you created a barn out of red material and it just exists in red? Well, that's a new experience for me. And when I ask how you did that and I discover that, that's an interesting aspect that a lot of people take that kind of stuff for granted. So asking the why and the how is what I like to do with the interviews. Now on Tuesdays, that's easy. A Tuesday, we talk about Second Amendment. So last year in season 7, every Tuesday was a focus on a different state. There's 52 weeks in a year and there's 50 states. So it works out pretty good if you do one state per year. The only issue then becomes, what order do you do them in? So we did a poll each week, and each week on Tuesday, people would choose what the next state would be. And then we just went through the process of elimination, randomly picked states to put in the poll, and then eventually went through all the different states, and we would attempt to talk about their current status, where they are within the rankings, I guess, what they have as far as their constitutional carry, we all know that they all have CCW at this point, and we know that it's all shall issue thanks to some recent court cases. But till recently, that was across the board, different situation in each state. But then getting into the other firearms laws, whether or not you can have a suppressor, if you can hunt with a suppressor, whether or not you can have NFA items, or if national level rural supply, you get into suppressors and hunting and all these different aspects. We would explore that stuff that was available, talking about the states, and then maybe doing a little bit contrasting or talking about their evolution, their history, where they're at and when they got there. Then we would talk about the famous people from that state, the organizations in that state, the inventions from that state, the facilities or the resources that exist in that state or have been in existence in that state. We talked about, I say, manufacturers. So, offer as much information as we have available from our research and on the Minuteman University site and in the 50 States of 2A book, and go through each state on Tuesday. Wednesday was the tactical quiz. So I've been trying to do a gun game show for a number of years. And last year in season 7 of this daily gun show, we basically put a different gun show out a different game show out every Wednesday. Every once in a while, we'd go back and hit things like tactical bingo or something. We had bingo cards, bingo boards that we sent out and that people purchased. So to raise funds and stuff. So we will play tactical bingo more often than some of the other games, but we almost every single week was a different type of a tactical quiz. I don't know if that was fun or not. It was definitely a lot of work and there wasn't a lot of return on it, but it was some fun, and a lot of people that did participate, won some prizes and stuff, patches and swag from SHOT Show and different loot that we acquired along the way. On Thursday, we would talk about travel and training. We would talk about the places we've been on the Gun Show Loophole Tour, the gun shops that we visited, the museums, the events that we've attended in the past, alternating with training. So big fan of firearms training. I like surplus, and training is surplus, military surplus, police surplus. Training is developed for use by whoever, troops or officers or whoever it might be, and then they either retire or the training becomes obsolete or the training becomes doctrine and the training becomes universal or it becomes a blip in history. But either way, that can be very interesting, very fascinating, and fun to research and fun to explore. The people who are trainers are great people. They have very dedicated and focused ambitions, so they're cool people to hang out with and to know. And sharing that was what we did on Thursdays. Friday is what we still do, the weekly wrap up. Ideally, if we had a longer show, we do the wrap up. That usually takes an hour, sometimes two. And what we're doing is we're wrapping up the week. What other people talked about, focused on what the Second Amendment protects. So there's a lot of good people out there. They come and go. Some people leave the scene, but often we get more and more people on board. We've got a growing group of dedicated, interesting people who are making it possible to keep track of all the different stuff that's happening out there, both positive and negative, on our rights, right? The different state level stuff, the national level stuff, and every once in a while the weird stuff. So paying attention to what those people are doing and summarizing what they do at the end of the week for a couple of reasons. One, so that you don't have to listen to everything all week and get a summary, but also to archive a table of contents, a bullet point list of what happened that week. Makes it ultimately easier to go back and discover what week or research what week something happened, or how long did this take to happen. We were talking about it for 3 weeks and then it happened, and then we talked about it for 2 weeks. So that was a 6-week situation, right? Like there's other things that take no time on the timeline, they're just a blip, and then other things we talk about for months or even years. Once you've been in the game for a while, you start to see this stuff, and the weekly wrap up was a way to help archive that, a way to help track it for people that are playing the long game. So that was the Daily Gun Show for season 7. It was a lot of effort. It was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of effort, and we don't really have any sponsors or anything, so just not able to do that this year. So I'm kind of playing around with season 8. In previous years, we've done the show at noon. We have done the show with a panel where we had, 10 people showing up to each show. Usually we would do the show in the evening, do the show in the at nighttime, and that brings people in who are kind of wrapping up or slowing down for the day. So we tried doing the show in the morning for a while, to kind of get the day started with the show. And that was actually pretty cool. Difficult to maintain when people are working and doing real jobs and stuff. So not something that we have the luxury of just doing. Let's see. So then when we're on the road for a long time, for a couple of 3 years there, one of the reasons I'm in debt today is I bought the van on a loan and then drove the van around. Immediately the transmission went out on it. Like the third trip, the transmission went out. So bought the van for I think $4,000, and then the transmission went out. So that was another $3,000. So I'm still paying off that initial $7,000 on the van, but paying for all the gas. And we didn't really stay in hotels, but every once in a while there'd be some expenses with food or something. Admission to someplace. We're trying to do this stuff with crowdfunding and trying to expand the awareness of what we can do as a community without having to wait for someone to present it to us. The problem with waiting for someone to present projects to you is those projects have to make money. Those projects, unless an independently wealthy Bruce Wayne is doing this stuff, or some sugar mama who's got a bunch of money is just doing stuff because you got nothing else to do, you get projects that are presented to you that are designed to make money, which is fine, but what you end up with is things that are focused on things that can make money, and what you don't end up with is things that are focused on what matters or what's necessary to change the game or the pattern. So that's what we attempted to do, is through crowdfunding, get out on the road, focus on events like the Gun Rights Policy Conference or the Wanamaker Gun Show or something in the industry that was going on that would bring people together. We would go to that event, and on the way, hit the different firearms museums. We were able to hit 33 of those in those years, as well as 200 something firearms, gun shops and shooting ranges and that kind of thing. Super fun. Our goal is to do that again at some point, but the Daily Gun Show happened all through that time, and Jimmy was helping out with running the show. Bob from Canada was still co-hosting all the time. So I was out driving around doing the thing. Those guys were essentially for free, just hanging out and keeping the show going. And we never turned it into something that was a sponsored thing that paid the bills so that these guys were getting paid. And it can only last so long when a bunch of people are just helping out and doing stuff. So it didn't last forever. We didn't really have that ambition to make it something that would last forever financially. And it was great when it was happening. It was a lot of fun. I was learning. We were also doing this in what that was like 2017, 18, and 19 era. So the environment was not as persecutive, whatever that word is. They weren't persecuting us at the time. They were not leaving us alone, but they weren't attacking with such passion. So it was a different time, and it was a lot of people that were just interested in experiencing what we're able to discover. It was a lot of fun. So anyway, then other seasons, I'm trying to think of them all. There haven't been, it's not like we have definite seasons until recently. I just sort of let the show kind of flow, and things would adjust or adapt to the circumstances at the time. But the show, like I say, was always different with whoever was involved with it as far as co-hosts or panel members. We also did things like the quizzes and the challenges and stuff. So we had some trivia and things, and we've had lots of different eras of I guess you could define some of the eras by who all's watching the show. Half of the show is us saying stuff on this end. The other half of the show is who's listening on the other end. And that's not been consistent the whole time. I don't know how many people who might be listening right now have been around for a while, but I suspect relatively few. So people who, when you have a show that doesn't stay the same, you're not going to have people stick around. There's some people are showing up and they think the travel is great, but then we're not traveling anymore, so they're going to move on. People who can't stand traveling and then we stop traveling, they might come back. So we've been too inconsistent to have consistent viewers or listeners. But for the people that have been around for a while, let us know if you've been around for a while or not. But the people that have been around for a while, I guess what I was going to say are definitely at least interested, if not not against the change in format of the show. All right, so that's been an hour. And that's it. So we're going to wrap this one up. Being too slow on the land navigation stuff, or just in run times and stuff like that. And then it depends on what year we're talking about too. I know that the queue has changed dramatically over the decades, and with the tasking of what the Braves are asked to do nowadays. So anybody that's SF adjacent is better than people who don't know what we're talking about. So that's happening. So with that, we'll say thanks everybody for joining us. We've got the robot project happening. Keep up with that. We've got actually nothing else coming up. I've got I'm doing taxes. That's a lot of fun. I'm going to be ending this show and probably, since I'm drinking coffee right now, work on some taxes. That'll be a lot of fun. But aside from that, we've got some big projects we're working on. And as those mesh, we'll be chatting more about that. Definitely have some interesting things happen on the horizon with the community. Look at all the stuff that's going on. G23, he's got his vacuum. It sounds like his vacuum is working. So soon he'll be kicking and doing his shows again. We still got an opening on Sundays, looking to see what happens if something shows up on a Sundays. You've got Travis on Saturdays. You got Brooke Cheney on Saturday afternoons. Foss is out there every single Wednesday with an overnight show. Check that out tomorrow night. every other week with the overnight on the weekends on Saturdays. Mentos is saying we're up to $1,000 on the project. I'm going to go hit a refresh over here. Awesome. Thank you very much. So that's definitely a cool goal. I'm going to do a thing at the end here, or after we're done here, and do a big thank you to everybody. It's neat to see achievements like that in the project. There's, so the lifespan of a project, this is our 37th project over here. I forget, we've done like 4 or 5 or more over on Kickstarter. So, we're way over 40 projects at this point. And sometimes they're big projects and we get a lot of people on board and there are lots of moving parts and kind of a no-brainer that it's going to work because we've got so many people on board. And then other times there's something like this that nobody's asking for this. It's not necessary. It doesn't take that many people, but it's a big deal. It's a big move. It just takes a bunch of people to grab onto it to adjust the move, but coordinating that many people is a task. So one of the things that can get people interested and aware is hitting the plateaus. So that's super cool. Thank you for that. Got me stoked. And like I say, I'm not trying to do my taxes. So instead of doing my taxes, which I should be doing after this, I'm probably going to do an update and say thanks to the folks who jumped on board there. You're not allowed to do incentives beyond the perks on Indiegogo. So I'm going to refrain from doing anything like that, but I'll make it worth everybody's while. I really appreciate the people that are participating in it. And once we've got a new resource like a robot, I'll know who participated, and it's only been 140 people. So, we're going to say thanks to the people that make it possible to get this robot. All right, that's awesome. Thanks for that. And we'll wrap it up here saying, let's see, tomorrow, I think the first thing is barbecue. He's doing a bracket, some kind of a non-gun related bracket. Check that out. And then after that would be Toby from Cape Gunworks will go in live with Rapid Fire Radio at 4 p.m. Eastern. Definitely worth listening to. One of the funnest times I have each week listening to an interactive broadcast of a radio show, or I guess technically recording of a radio show on Wednesdays. After that is a couple of hours of, you got the Polite Society podcast is tomorrow. I think they said they're recording 2 of them tomorrow, but I don't know if they're both live. But then you get Chris from the 740, does his Wednesday show where he brings people together. It's usually a roundtable type of discussion focused on an event or competition or topic of the day. After that, you get Roll Call doing his rants and raves, and then we'll be back at midnight to do the Daily Gun Show again. Lots of cool stuff on Wednesdays. We end up participating in quite a few of those shows. Wednesdays is my task day when I get a bunch of my work done, or whatever you want to call it. While I'm listening to those shows, I'm over here clicking on stuff and getting a bunch of podcasts updated and things sorted and things scheduled and stuff. So I always look forward to it. It's a productive day and a day that goes by quick with all the different live stuff that's happening. All right, thanks everybody again, and we'll be back tomorrow.